plan map and looking at the sizes of the streets and the properties in the area, it simply makes no sense to me. I mean, Golf Links is quite a wide parcel, and if you look on both sides of that, the strips of land are really quite small. And there's a huge area between Timber Lane Trail and Cranberry Lane, which is environmental protection area, so obviously that's not supposed to be developed, but I'm sure there'll be a way around it. I don't understand the whole thing, I really don't. I think the town of Aurora is a great place. I've looked at the developments in Newmarket and Richmond Hill. I have relatives and friends in both areas, and Richmond Hill is a zoo. Like, I would not live in Richmond Hill under any circumstances right now. And back in the day, it was very similar to Aurora. And they just developed everywhere. Like crazy, it's incredible. And Newmarket's going the same way, as is Woodbridge and Maple and all the areas around. And now King City, after a very, very long fight, is finally going in that direction as well. I don't see why Aurora has to go in that direction. I don't get it. I understand that the owners of the property have some rights. However, I know that the town of Aurora has refused all sorts of things which made sense to me, and to approve this, which makes no sense to me whatsoever, it's I don't know, it's ludicrous. I don't know what else to say. Very quickly, I'll say one thing, and this really doesn't connect with this at all, but this is first thing that really bothered me about the town of Aurora. There used to be a pool on George Street. Grew up there all my life. I was swimming in that pool, and the town council wouldn't spend 300 grand to fix it up. Instead, they tore the place down. Now, the same year, the town council spent $130,000 on a boardroom table for the new town of Aurora. So, and none of you, I don't think, any of you here were on the council in those days, but that was 25 years ago. But it's just an indication to me of what people put first and what people put after first. And I just think the town should pay attention to the existing residents, not some future residents, however nice and wonderful people they may be, and just think about how this impacts the people living in these streets. And it simply doesn't make sense to me. There's just not enough room on both sides of Golf Links Drive to build these houses. It doesn't make sense. And to try to make it make sense is just impossible. So they're doing what they can do, the developers are doing what they can do, that's fine, but I don't get it. And I don't see why it should be approved. I just don't. Sorry. Thank you, sir.
Susan Whitehurst, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillor, for giving me an opportunity to speak. Very hard to follow after Oscar, who reminded us that we don't only live in a beautiful town, but we live in a democracy. And democracies aren't just about governments, they're about every aspect of our life. So thank you, Oscar, for that reminder. My name is Suzanne Whitehurst, and I live at 11 Pinehurst Court. I do not back onto the golf course. I'm around the corner from streets that do. So, why am I not speaking? Because I do have some theme I keep hearing, and I'm hoping to be able to put it into perspective and maybe highlight it. So let me start by saying, like many of you, in 1989, my family moved to Aurora because of the green spaces, the birds, the calm. It was the opposite to Scarborough. Scarborough is busy, chaotic, crazy. And I couldn't believe what a beautiful, calm town it was. So that's why we moved too. Selfish? Am I talking about selfish things? Maybe. But let me ask the councillors, is it any more selfish than what the developer's talking about? How many of you could count accurately the number of variances the developer is asking for? We're not talking about developing his land. We're talking about variances to our town bylaws. I couldn't count them accurately. That's selfish. I think that there is enough land here for the developer to develop and stay within our bylaws. I have heard from councillors at every meeting, other than this one, because I have not spoke to anyone tonight, that the developer bought that land so he gets a right to develop it. And it's said as if there's nothing the councillors can do about it. So I want you to remind you that we're not talking about whether the developer develops the land. We're talking about whether we give him the variances he's asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitehurst. Excuse me. Sue Walmer, please.
Thank you. My name is Susan Walmer, and I live at 14 Marsh Harbour. I've spoken and attended the other meetings. I'm also part of the board and been involved in numerous discussions over the number of months. I also want to comment on what Oscar has said tonight, and he reminded me, and I've been to a number of these meetings and a lot of different events over the years, that we are part of our natural environment. And we forget, because we're here in Canada, maybe we become too accustomed to it. So thank you, Oscar, for reminding us, from someone who's come to our country, how blessed we are to have our natural environment around us. So you get the Oscar from me. I have a number of questions also from members, but I think you've heard them all. So I want to take a little bit of a different approach tonight and tell you about some research that's been going on. I work in the environmental community, and we've been talking about how nature affects our health and well-being. There are studies both here in Canada but mainly abroad that talk about the benefits to us as human beings being in nature. And I think, again, what we have forgotten over the years is that we are part of nature. We talk about protecting habitat for species at risk, but really we are part of that habitat. As human beings, over the years, we are destroying more and more of that habitat that not only other species need, but we also need to live. And I think it's important that we take a sort of a 180-degree thought process change and say, you know, this is our environment, we're part of nature, and we need nature in order to survive and to continue our existence. I'm very concerned, as are a number of people, that as we encroach upon nature close to our communities, that we don't have those advantages of getting out in nature. They say 20 minutes walking in a forest or walking somewhere where you can't hear the traffic is the same as an hour or more of physical exercise in the gym. And I know, Klaus, we know that well, right, from walking on the trails and all the beautiful trails we do have here in Aurora. So I think we have an opportunity to increase that here in Aurora, not only for our benefit, but for people throughout Aurora. This is an Aurora-wide issue, and if you read in the newspaper recently, Club Links has now bought or looking at Glen Abbey and converting that also to a housing development. Again, not close to us, but impacts us here in Ontario and as residents who need nature to survive. So I think maybe this is a provincial issue. Maybe provincial needs to look at golf course conversions and how that affects communities not only here in Aurora, but across the province. So that might be something you as councillors might want to take to the province and to our MPP, Chris Ballard. So there's other aspects of this that we need to look at. I'm going to read a couple of questions that we've gotten from our membership. Our membership's been very engaged. We have over 600 members now, and growing. So some of the questions that have come from them are about water and flooding. And we'll provide you with a list of all the questions, but just to get on the record here, there's a question from one resident who says that currently the water flow and site drainage across all properties in the neighborhood is still unsuccessful. What is the mitigation plan when the construction starts and with the new development? I'm one of those residents with water woes, so I completely agree with this.
1 minute, Ms. Walmer.
Drainage on the area around the fourth hole has always been a problem, and the course floods with every rain or major snowmelt. How will the developer safeguard homes from being impacted? The other one is Timberland Trail experiences flooding issues resulting from winter snow thaw. Snow will be pushed up against fences, and in the spring, backyards will become swamps and destroy and ruin current landscaping, damage pools, and result in water in basements. What guarantee do we have that the developer will fix these problems, and for how long in the future? The other thing I want to mention is, again, that encroachment agreements do not imply agreement with this application. I also had another question on growth plan that has not been answered yet, and I hope that in the staff report that they will address the growth plan and the fact that we do have enough development right now to meet our minimum targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Walmer. Cindy Skellins, please.
Good evening, Mayor, and through you to the council and fellow Auroras people. I do not live in the area. My mother does. She lives at 97 Golf Links, but I have been and still do reside in Aurora and have for 57 years. So I have a long history of the green Aurora. I agree with everything that's been said up to date. But there's one other thing that I don't believe we've been talked about. CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, I have not yet seen anything mentioned in that way. If there has been an audit for a CPTED audit for this, and I look at the single loaded roads and I see the impact that it'll have on every one of the houses on the other side, is potentially harmful when it comes to crime prevention. And the reason for that is that now these people have access to areas that before had many people looking at not many people looking at the backs of the properties, now can witness when people are home, when they're not home. They have access and a very easy escape route if they decide to do harm to the neighbors. That area has not been addressed to the best of my knowledge, and I'm only looking at the single loaded road because I have to admit, west of Murray, I'm not as familiar with how those roads go. And I think that's something that we can be really proud of in Aurora, is we are a safe community. Why would we enter into something that's going to put our residents into a harmful or less potentially safe situation? I also look at the environment and see how this is detrimental to the environment, both because the water cannot get into the aquifer, and that every person who lives there who's abutting the current golf course, their yards are now going to be affected negatively. Not specifically, but not exclusive of water drainage, but their harm to their environment is going to be something that can't be at this point until they dig up and alter the patterns of water flow. Those trees are going to die. Yards are going to die. My mother's particular property is going to have water flowing into her backyard. There's areas that I think in the time that we've spent on this is not given the impact, and I've never yet been given an answer. My mom's property is going to drop. Who is going to replace the value that she's going to lose in that property that she's put her life's heritage and ultimately our family's income into? No one's given me that answer as to who's going to replace that? Who's going to take quality of life but also future earnings from that as well? I usually will take my 5 minutes, but I won't tonight, because I think we've not talked about the crime prevention, and I don't think, nor has a developer really given it any good answer to that area.
Thank you, Ms. Skellins. Jean Martindale. Ms. Martindale, please.
My name's Jean Martindale. I live at 36 Golf Links Drive. So I had a few questions. This 10-story building that they're talking about putting up, I don't know what the size of the footprint is going to be, so that's one of my questions. I'm asking that because when I keep hearing about the other condo, that's actually a Yonge Street address, and I don't know what agreement that they have with this condo, but I don't think they're supporting people on Golf Links. They are a Yonge Street address. They just encroach onto our street. So the other condo is 2 buildings. It's 150 units. That's pretty big. So 144 units, that's a 7-story. This is going to be 10 stories. First story doesn't count. So I'm thinking it's going to be a pretty huge building, but when they show the picture, it looks kind of thin, not really that intrusive. I don't believe that that's going to be the case. If it is thin, not very big looking building, then the unit sizes have to be pretty small. So then I have to ask, what's the value of those units? Right now, the housing developments around us are around $750. The condo, I think, is around $500. What are the unit values of this condo that they're putting up that's going to decrease our value of our homes even more? Also, where are the Mack trucks going to park? We have our little street that's already very busy. We have stopping on our street every time people want to get into Tim Hortons. Now we're going to have huge Mack trucks pulling onto that street, because I see it when I walk down Yonge Street every morning, because I work down around Shepherd, and there's a condo going up that's 30 stories, 150 units, first floor, 4 stories is commercial, and they have at least 10 Mack trucks parked on either side of the road every morning idling. That's not going to stop. It's been going on for at least a month and a half. What's going to happen on our street for that? All right, now, so I take a breath. All right. I had a couple of notes and I don't remember everything that I wanted to say, sorry. As I said, with our street, it is busy. People keep on talking about Tim Hortons. It's also that main feeder street for the school, the high school that's across on Dunning. It's also a main feeder street during the rush hour time periods for the GO train. I used to do it myself. It's directly through, heading over for the GO train. So it's not just the Tim Hortons. If you're looking at the rush hour traffic, which they keep on quoting as only being about an increase of about 15%, it's not going to be that. They're not looking at the amount of traffic that goes up our street generally for the school, for the GO train. It's always a direct run. There's a few other things, but I'll put it in an email. I'm okay with emails, but I think that my biggest concern is we don't want the condo. I don't know what kind of agreement that the condo that encroaches on our street in the first place, that has a Yonge Street address, is going to make with the condo, but they're not representing the people on our street if they're thinking that we're going to agree to have a 10-story condo going up on the top of the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martindale. Jackie Wonk? Wonch? Sorry. If you could help us.
Hi, it's Jackie Wonch. Hi there, everybody. My name is Jackie Wonch. I live at 105 Golf Links Drive. I didn't grow up in Aurora, but I have since moved to Aurora at 105 for a little over a year. My husband grew up in Aurora and actually grew up in the house that we purchased. Everyone here has talked to you about logistics and details and bylaws, and that's, you know, it needs to be done. And but I want to approach it from the emotional side that I have invested in this community in the last year. So although I didn't grow up in Aurora, I did actually visit 105 Golf Links Drive when I was younger, when my husband and I were dating. And I remember coming into the community, driving through not only on Golf Links, but just the area, thinking, holy smokes, this is really pretty. I didn't know where Aurora was in the first place. And you come into it and you're just very surprised at what it actually is like. And it's just a beautiful place to live. And so driving down the street in the summer, it's, you know, I was taken aback by the beauty, and then you're driving around at night, there's people walking. I'm like, this people walk at night, it's safe, it's great. I'm like, I could, you know, maybe one day live here after I get my taste of Toronto and raise the kids somewhere else, right? So we were lucky enough, my husband's parents moved away, someone else purchased the home, and then the house went back up for sale, and no houses ever go up for sale on golf links. There was nothing ever for sale. And even in Aurora, on the golf course, that was something that was so important to us, was to live somewhere where there was no one behind us. That was our only stipulation when we were looking for a home. I want something big enough to raise a family and no one behind us. That's what we wanted. And my husband's house went up for sale and tricked me into looking at it, and I was like, yeah, like I loved it back then. I love it now, and it's just the type of place that I knew that something like this community was where I wanted to raise our kids. We have 2 small girls. One goes to Regency, one is in daycare, will be attending Regency, and what they're proposing in my backyard at the 17th tee is kind of like that other gentleman, I find ludicrous. We walk out there, we play out there, and to picture a retaining wall 2 meters high, and then an 11-meter high house on top of that, looking out, and the side of that house is going to be whatever the bylaw is, that, and then asking for the variance. It's going to be literally on the other side of my fence. And I can't, the sad thing is I feel I can picture it, but I don't want, I just can't believe that this could actually take place. And so my request is, we've had someone come out to our house to have a look, and we're very grateful to him, and on your council, and it's like you walk the course and it's just something that is once in a lifetime, and people have said it in the past, once it's gone, but it truly is on the verge of being gone. And I'm just really hoping that something like this doesn't take place, because this was the whole reason that I wanted to come into Aurora, and that's why Oscar and other people are filtering in to want to raise their kids here. It's a beautiful community, and everybody knows this, and I'm rehashing what everyone else has said, but at the same time I feel that this emotional connection to this place is so important, and I don't want it to be lost in the jumble of legal and the little issues of variances, and I understand that we need to address those and fight with on that side of things, but I also want to raise my girls in a place where we go out the gate and they run around in the back. We have a pool. This is my cottage. I don't have a cottage up north. This is, I understand, 30 seconds. This is where I stay in my summers. This is where I live. This is my retreat. This is my vacation. This is everything that I've invested in for myself and my family. So I just hope that I'm sure that's come across with me, but I hope that is something that's taken into consideration as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wanch. Rhonda Ray. Ms. Ray.
Good evening. Everyone's comments have been very inspiring. My name is Rhonda Ray. I live with my husband at 110 Golf Links Drive. And first this evening, I am going to read an email that was sent to the councillors by my husband today. I was very impressed with your comments and the quality of the comments and questions of our neighbors at the last meeting. Most of my concerns were raised at the meeting, particularly with regards to the failure/refusal of the developer to cooperate with both the intent and the policies of the Stable Neighbourhoods section of the official Town of Aurora plan. And this part is emphasized by being underlined. The variances requested are indeed unreasonable. The official plan is excellent and should be respected by both the developer and the OMB. My recent attendance at various meetings has imparted a new understanding and deeper appreciation for your efforts, meaning Mayor, Councillor. I really appreciate the support from the mayor and the hardworking men and women at the town's council and planning. Thank you all. One of my primary concerns that has not been addressed has to do with public safety. The cul-de-sac roads in the developer's proposal are too narrow, 20 feet, for access and service by multiple emergency vehicles. What happens if fire, police, ambulance, and hazmat vehicles need access at the same time? A fire truck alone requires at least 18 feet of width, with outriggers down to be in service. Fire safety trumps all other considerations, so I am requesting, with all due respect, that a full review by the fire chief or his designates be undertaken. For me, this is not only a moral issue, but also a legal issue affecting my family, my neighbors, and my town. I'm also very concerned about the effect of the proposed development on water quality, as it falls within the 2-year wellhead protection zone. Please see Schedule L below, and that was sent along with the email. The highlighted section shows that the location of the proposed development is within the 2 to 5 year wellhead zone, which is a very critical area for water quality. Therefore, I would respectfully submit that a proper peer-reviewed risk assessment and risk management plan are needed vis-a-vis the effects of contamination from construction equipment, road salt, snow storage, lawn treatments, such as fertilizers and pesticides, pathogen threats due to changes in stormwater flows, and so on. This parcel of land is an important water generation site for the wellhead. And his P.S., I will be an enthusiastic supporter of a plan to negotiate a fair settlement with a private owner to convert this private green space to public. It does have tremendous potential as a future High Park or James Gardens, for example, of Aurora. Aurora Botanical Gardens, Aurora Butterfly Conservatory, what an opportunity. So that was on behalf of my husband, Russell Burnham. And I have a few comments I'll try to include, and also in particular with regard to safety, about the numerous proposed single-load roads. I recently visited 2 local fire stations and 1 ambulance station to research the road allowance requirements of various emergency response vehicles. The fire trucks are approximately
1 minute, Ms. Ray, please.
Thank you. 10 feet wide and range in length up to 50 feet for an aerial platform model. The actual minimum width requirement of the paved driving service for fire trucks is a total of approximately 18 feet, as an additional 8 feet, as mentioned in the email, is necessary. These are the stabilizer outriggers, which also require platforms to go underneath. The proposed single-load roads have a paved driving surface of only 20 feet. This narrow width would obviously be incapable of accommodating any regular-sized vehicles, let alone other emergency response vehicles such as hazmat units, which are also approximately 10 feet in width, and ambulances, which are approximately 9 feet in width.
Okay, could I ask you to wrap up, please, Ms. Ray?
So basically, during an emergency, time is of the essence in order to preserve life, property, and the environment. I respectfully request that the town conduct an independent review of these proposed single-load roads and include in the process a full consultation with the fire department and other emergency response departments. I also respectively
Okay, Ms. Ray, I'm going to ask you to wrap up. You can come back again.
I also respectively request complete transparency of this entire development project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Howard Epworth, please.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, I will need but only a minute. Quoting the immortal words of T.S. Eliot, in a minute there is time for visions and revisions that a minute can reverse. If this is the vision, where's the revision that the councilors asked for last meeting? It's up to you fine people to reverse the vision. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Second time, so.
Any other speakers for the first time? Then I will ask, after I ask Ms. Nemne and Dr. Hossack to come up, we'll take some questions. I'll turn to our director for some questions. Ms. Nemne and then Mr. Hossack.
Thank you. Just to pick up on my comments before I had to step away, I want to underscore that there have been no meaningful modifications or adjustments have been made to this plan since it was first put forward by Geranium, despite 3 meetings, despite all of the letters that and concerns that have been shared with them, because they think their plan is perfect, and it is an imperfect plan. When we were told at the last public meeting that in response to the narrow streets, the Geranium representative said they didn't plan for cars to be parked on the roads, I just couldn't believe the response. Will no one have guests come visit? Will no one have family gatherings? I guess they are hoping that only sad and lonely people buy these houses so that no one ever comes. I could go on and on with the non-responses to the concerns that have been raised, and yet they have come here meeting after meeting and have told you that they are listening and responding to the residents. They are not. It makes one wonder if Geranium is simply biding its time before making an application to the OMB. If that is in fact where this planning process ends up, I urge you, as all of the residents I'm sure urge you as well, to not be intimidated by this. The protection of green space can be for the benefit of all Aurora. It isn't just about the house that backs onto the golf course. It's about all of Aurora and how it will benefit from the protection of green space. So please do not let this hurdle or this threat impede your ability to do what's right for the town of Aurora. Please, Council, ask your town staff and Geranium to bring forward alternative concepts that honor and value the feedback that has been provided to you through this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nemne. Dr. Hossack.
You know, Oscar has a gentle spirit and a deep soul, and he touched us all. But now for something completely different. I think I left you with the term carpetbagger hanging in the air. Let me pick up there. I'm going to complete my prepared remarks, and since I've had a few minutes to think, I'll throw in a few others. The self-serving part of my final statement. So the questions for the council and its staff. Do we have any legal recourse with the destruction of home and property enjoyment with being sandwiched between 2 roads? And who do we sue? The city, the council members, the developer? Will the city take the initiative to reassess our properties for tax purposes if this development proceeds as proposed and thereby lowers our property values? If not, where can we collectively go to right that wrong? Has the staff taken a close look at the narrow strip between the back of my property and all of these other strong points that have been made? And can they and the councillors truly countenance approving narrower allowances so the developer can both squeeze a road through and jam houses there on the way by? Are you prepared to partner with your constituents and other levels of government to see a proper trail link installed? And will you allow your planning staff to generate and/or work with us on alternate proposals that do fit within the character of this neighborhood? And if not, why not? For the developers, I have two questions. When will we see this so-called flexibility, and do you have any workable alternatives that can come even close to dealing with the destructive impact of road H on Doty residents? Have you run the numbers on lower density, higher cost homes where space permits that are in keeping with the R1 homes against which your property abuts? And questions for my neighbors and fellow community members. Do you feel you're being manipulated by this developer and or subjected to a divide and conquer strategy? Do you feel that some part or all of you has already given up on opposing this development as it stands? I almost did when I listened to that planner's presentation. Oh, God, it was so wonderful. My final comment is this. Do not give up. Let us work with and hold the developer and council to account to find a working solution. Let us work together and not in small self-interest groups. So doing, let us operate from the best parts of ourselves. Let us demonstrate to this developer, to the council, to our neighbors, to our families, and to ourselves that we have the courage of our convictions. Dare to believe that we can prevail in a way that will make us all proud of ourselves and enrich our community. And let us trust that the council has the intellectual, heart, and moral capacity to do the right thing. So let me just add a few extemporaneous comments in here. I think our association executive has been doing an excellent job of mobilizing the process and the arguments against this development, and their approach and conduct has been above reproach. But if we cannot come to a sensible and reasonable accommodation, we need to shine the light and get full transparency on this process, as others have said. And we may need to employ some of the tactics that have been employed against us. We need to shine the light on this process. Who should we shine the light on? Club Link and its parent TWC have a philosophy and values that are not consistent with the kind of partnership it has entered into and the practice it is associating itself with. Let us let the chairman of the board and each of the individual directors know this. Shine the light for them and on them.
30 seconds, sir.
Well, I got some other ones. How about this one? Let's bring full transparency to the political process, tracing and aggregating back to source all political contribution at all relevant levels of government so we can understand how the money is flowed in the political process, including former politicians who may be on a developer's payroll or supplier list. We just have to ask them for the information. And here's a thought. We can put together a small team of our very smart teenage children, let them do a civic project on political contributions, make the presentation on open association, employ social media the ways they see fit.
I'm going to ask
I have a half a dozen more, but we'll save them for
I'll ask you to wrap up, sir.
I'm done.
Thank you for your comments. We've been making notes. A couple of that I pulled out that I think would be beneficial to answer. First of all, I'd like to go to our solicitor, Mr. Marr.
He stepped out.
I'm sorry? He stepped out?
He stepped out.
Well, hopefully he comes back. So I'm going to go to our Director of Planning and Development Services, and many of these questions have been answered before, and a couple of them actually are on our website. So we do have a pretty extensive FAQ on our website. So I'll go to him first, and I'm going to go back to Mr. Gibbon. But I'm going to go to Mr. Rumuno first, Mr. Gibbon. Okay? So I'm designated greenbelt, Oak Ridges Marine, conformity, compatibility, off-road trail for continuous off-road trail, diverse housing stock, and the word affordable housing was used. Parks, good question. We hadn't heard this one before. Parks and Recreation Service, who's defining that? Water shortages Sewage capacity we've answered before, but Mr. Ramuno will do that again. Drainage and property values is actually an extensive question that has been answered on our website. And our solicitor came back, so we'll go the other way first, and I'll ask Mr. Ramuno to answer these questions first.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to the comment or the question regarding are the lands designated greenbelt, as we've heard, the lands, the Highland, former Highland Gate Golf Course, are designated private parkland within the town's official plan. They are not designated greenbelt by the provincial greenbelt plan. A portion, the westerly portion of the lands are within the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Boundary, but they're identified as settlement area, and the provincial plan allows urban development within the settlement area. Again, with respect to conformity and compatibility, the Oak Ridges Moraine Plan does identify it as a settlement area. Urban development is permitted. Of course, we're going through an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment process to determine conformity and compatibility. With respect to the trail question, we've heard a lot about our master trails plan and the amount of trails that the applicant is proposing. I think there's approximately 7 kilometers of trails, and about 80% of those are considered off-road trails. There will be a portion of the trails as submitted by the applicant that are on road, where they're crossing roads and sidewalks will be used. Our trails plan does require that wherever possible, the majority of trails be off-road, and as well as a continuous trail. And the plan before us is attempting to implement a east-west trail connection. And the proposal is for those trails and that green space, approximately 49%, to be conveyed to the municipality. And that's a combination of the environmental protection lands, which are not proposed to be developed, and approximately 10 acres of parkland. With respect to the parkland, our Parks and Recreation Department, they are working with the developer. They've been meeting with them. They're reviewing the plans and all the documentation that have been provided, and they're working on resolving some of the issues that they still have with respect to the amount of parkland and the configuration of the parkland that is being proposed, as well as what those parks will include in the way of any playgrounds, facility fits. And when we do receive final comments from our Parks Department, they will be presented to council and the public for consideration. Diverse housing stock. I mean, this is a good question with respect to the affordability. What's being proposed are primarily single detached housing, 50 to 60 foot frontages with a combination of two-story and single-story homes. With respect to affordability, obviously what the condominium apartment those units may fit the affordability criteria. Encroachments, I'll leave that to our solicitor. With respect to water shortages, it's my understanding that we know town of Aurora no longer has water restrictions with respect to the proposed servicing. With respect to the proposed development would be required to be serviced by water and sewer services. The documentation, the technical reports have been submitted by the applicant. Our Director of Environment and Infrastructure Environmental Services have reviewed those with respect to those meeting the town standards. Sewage capacity, that's something that we hear. If council were to develop any residential development here, they would have to allocate water and sewage capacity to the specific development, and that is done at a later date. Drainage and flooding, we've heard a lot of comments, and we've been meeting with some residents and people from the Ratepayers Association. Earlier on in October, we did have a meeting with members of the Ratepayers Association and staff from the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, and they provided their opinion with respect to how they reviewed the background documents that were submitted, and they evaluated a variety of environmental reports, hydrogeology reports, water balance reports, and as we've identified in our report, they've issued, they don't have any concerns with the technical documents as submitted with respect to stormwater management techniques. The Conservation Authority is requiring the low impact development. That is avoiding stormwater ponds and implementation of swales and infiltration beds. Our staff is looking at that as well. With respect to any development that occurs anywhere in town, stormwater management would have to be contained on the lands to be developed, and there will be no impact on to adjoining lands. It's something that our engineers take a careful look at. Property values, I mean, it's something that, you know, I can't really go into much detail with respect to any impact on property values, because all I can add is that based over the last 10 years, I mean, we've all seen it, and you know, property values within the greater GTA have gone on and have been, you know, we've seen increases on a year-to-year basis. I think that's it. Okay.
With respect to property values, once again, on our website, there is a discussion around property values. And property assessment is controlled by MPAC, not by the town. And if there was an issue, MPAC would reassess it. Mr. Marr, there was two questions I think that you could deal with. One was whether or not the town had any thing to do with the encroachment letters that were sent out. And the other was the 1 foot reserve, if you could address those.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, the town had nothing to do with the encroachment letters. That was completely the initiative of the applicant. With regards to the 1 foot reserves, staff have looked back at previous council resolutions relating to Highland Gate all the way back into the early 80s. We weren't able to find a specific council resolution other than anything else that was disclosed in my previous report to council on January 13th, 2015. So if there's any questions, I'd refer